There you go. Okay, so there's the event this evening. And just a little bit of an introduction to say that this is a collaboration, three-way collaboration between Luton Heritage Forum, Heritage Enterprise Hub, which Paul has been doing a project with, and also Luton Historical Society. Now, what we decided, okay, as a group, we've met regularly for 40 years in the Bushmead Community Centre, and we are going to be keeping that going. But we're going to be what we're going to do is that we're, in a minute, you'll see the way that we're going to be alternating, okay, between face-to-face and online meetings. But we're really pleased that these three groups have got together to present the first of our programs for 2022. Just to let you know, okay, that the monthly talks that will be coming up, we've planned, well, that should say July, the last one there, but we've planned the first 7 of the year. So it's Paul tonight. His is online. You can see it's every other month is online. In February, we've got Luton's Pubs and Pints. That's Stuart Smith. Stuart obviously wrote the very popular book about 20 years ago. He's going to be updated for 2022, and he's going to be speaking to us at the community centre. In March, we've got Deborah Knight and her team are going to be doing an online presentation about Luton's hidden communities. In April, we've got Howard Chandler that's going to be giving the history of Luton Airport. We're really pleased that in May, we've got Stephen Bunker that wrote the well-known book Sporopolis. He's going to be joining us from the West Country to talk about London, Luton and Paris, which is the Luton at the height of its hat-making glory. In June, we've got the Bushmead History of Churches in Stopsley. That's David Alexander. And in July, online, we've got a history of Luton Saturday nights. We're going to be going from everywhere, from dancing with the GIs at the George, all the way through to the Edge and the Sands Disco, maybe even go as far as Dunstable. So that's in July. So it's quite a programme that we've got coming up. I'll repeat that at the end for people that are a little bit later. Highlighting a couple of events. Folks, if you could mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Do have a couple of events coming up. One is the guided walk of Hightown. That's on Saturday, February the 26th. We're going to be doing a 2-hour guided walk around there with a postcard pack. So I'm going to be sending you an email, everyone that's attending tonight, with details of how to book on for the guided walk there. What we're also going to do, I'm just highlighting to you another thing here. Might have seen a lot in the local paper recently about a number of pubs that are under threat. The Hibbert and the Rabbits. The Rabbits is also down the Old Bedford Road. That's been renovated into flats. Pleasingly, okay, those two are having just renovations inside, but the exterior will stay the same. But the Moulders in Park Street is threatened with demolition, not just renovation, but demolition, as well as the old Edge nightclub to the right of it there. That's quite an ancient building as well. You can see from the photos there is Mary of the Moulders from the Irish community. There was a thriving pub. And it's such a shame that the place is not just being renovated for flats, but demolished. So I'm going to be sending you around a link if you'd like to comment, please, on the Luton planning portal. That'll really make a difference, okay, to whether that's even discussed at the council meeting. More comments, more likely is to be on the agenda, and we can make the case for a strategic plan to save the Luton's pub buildings. Okay, that's just a little advert as people come in there. So, Paul, why don't you start off your talk, please? Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everyone for coming. There's more people here than usually goes to any of my gigs, so that's quite a pleasant thing. So I want to kind of just make a disclaimer about what I'm going to be speaking about. The history of 33 spreads over like from the 70s into the 2000s, and so I can't kind of acknowledge everyone who contributed to that amazing few years, and that's part of why I'm doing this talk. It's about creating interest in 33, trying to bring people's memories alive, so that when I set out to create an archive of the work that went on, I can get contributions from people. People can knock my aging brain and remind me of things I've missed out. So by way of background, just so you all know who I am and why I was involved, is that I was born in Luton, and although I've kind of spent little bits of time away from Luton, I've always found it the most amazing creative place, and the people of Luton have been nothing but inspirational throughout my life. And I'm in my 70s now, and I just find it still stimulating that so many creative people are around, and I think it's part of being in this little valley that kind of keeps all the creativity that we have in. So I went to school in Luton, a place called Surrey Street, and I was lucky enough to have at that school in 1963 an inspirational teacher who just turned up one day as a kind of relief teacher and sat in the class. And anyway, it transpired, to cut a long story short, that this guy was actually living in Luton. His name was Mel Davis. I was a kind of sort of 14, 15-year-old kid with no real ambitions, was always interested in the arts, but he kind of inspired me in the world of music. He inspired a lot of people. And 5 years later, in 1969, I joined his band and stayed in his band, and still in that band. That band is still going. We all arrive in our wheelchairs to do gigs, and Mel's passed on. But he was, I'm making the point because that kickstarted my kind of life of creativity, I guess. And I think, you know, it's worth bearing in mind that inspirational people within schools were important then and important now. And sometimes I think that sometimes the amount of admin that teachers have to embark on kind of sometimes stops that kind of interaction. And it's a long story that is worth a book on its own. Anyway, the thing that links the two pictures that you are on the screen now, it's kind of quite an interesting connection. So in the early 70s, I bumped into some people. Linda Farrell, who was a dancer, actress, in the end finished up at Financial Wizard. That's more about that later. Tim Powell, who was a kind of a musician and a madman and a bit of a maverick. Phil Imber, the late Phil Imber, who was also a musician and later kind of in one of the very early punk bands, the Jets, and later on became a kind of a guru in the world of social media and web design and those kinds of things. And an artist, Martin Green, who was a designer. A few other odds, ragabone poets and people. And this loose collective of kind of creative people started to do some working together and then putting on performances in shops, empty shops in the high street. And it's another example of how history goes full circle, because we have high streets with empty shops, and you know, creative people should be taking those over, I think, at the moment. So we put on poetry events, art events, exhibitions in the town in the early 70s. And we also started to do some promotions at a place called the Royal Hotel, which is in Mill Street. I've forgotten what it's called now, But there was a kind of lots of crazy things that were done at that. There was lots of gigs that were put on, bands like Paul Young's early band. Interestingly, as we're talking about 33, it's Paul Young's actually 66th birthday today, so it's kind of a strange connection. And we did lots of promotions of local bands, jazz, funk bands, and the touches the first early days of kind of punk in a sense, and we'll talk a bit more about that as well. And in 1976, for instance, it was the first at the Royal Hotel, was the first gig outside of London, I believe, by the band called The Damned, which was the leading punk band at the time. And that event is kind of sunk in our memory because after the event, Captain Sensible and the rest of the band were put up by a lady called Jean McClements, who actually featured later in the work of 33. And the first thing they did was trying to break into the local chemist in Whippley Way, I think, Whippley Ring. And that's kind of my first experience of the punk world. And around about that time was the first time I met Spawn as well, who came to feature in 33. And is known for his work with UKDK. So at the Royal Hotel, we had a film club putting on experimental movies, the gigs with local bands and the punk band I've just described. And we also ran a kind of improvised music night at the Royal Hotel. And interestingly, in 75, 76, this album, Anthony Braxton and Derek Bailey, and it's called The Royal. This was recorded by Tim Powell at the Royal Hotel. And this album went on to become kind of a landmark album in contemporary music. And at that time, it was released as a vinyl with just one single volume. And just 3-4 years ago, the second volume of this album was released. And so Anthony Braxton was an American musician. So we put on musicians like Steve Lacy, Braxton and Bailey, several other musicians who were working in the contemporary music scene. So that started to create for some of us a kind of an interest and a worth within that area of music and music production. And bit by bit, we started looking for space to actually bring all of these things together. And in the early 70s, the Luton Arts Council, which at that time was an organisation of kind of amateur dramatic societies, had this building, 33 Guildford Street, as a rehearsal space. And there was a kind of a wonderful group of people called Luton Arts Council who reported to the Borough Council and looked at putting on performances of amateur dramatics things. So 33 was initially a space that was actually used as a storage room for work at the Library Theatre and places like that by all the local dramatic groups. And we kind of weaved our way into being this kind of ragged band bunch of characters, you know, wormed our way into being part of Luton Arts Council and tried to get hold of using the space at 33. And of course we were treated as like kind of hippies from the past and didn't really fit in and all those kinds of things. But we argued the point, and in the end we were given access to 33, not 35. So as you're looking at it now, the building on the left with the big 33, I can't find, I'm sure there must be a picture somewhere, I cannot find a picture of 33 as it was before we actually moved in. It would be brilliant if someone knows of a picture, can have a, can send me a picture. But we moved there I believe, in 1976, and we moved into that one building. So, Paul, I don't know if you want to stop if anyone wants to ask anything up until this point.
Yeah. Anyone got any? If you raise your hand, or if you'd like to unmute, just to let me know, folks, if you'd like to speak. Okay, carry on, Paul.
Yeah,
stop
so
every 5 slides.
Okay,
I think probably best.
Yeah, so if we just stay, okay, I'll come on to that in a minute. But if we go back to the other slide, just the 33 slide for a moment. Yeah, so when we moved in there, and there's a lot of detail about talking with the council, all those kinds of things that I don't want to bore you with at the moment. We started to look at ways of getting finance, ways of making the building work. And we were really lucky at that time to get a grant from the Gulbenkian Foundation, which was at that time giving out grants for arts work and arts production and all those kinds of things. And different to what happens today, we were able to negotiate and talk with a funding body. And they asked us quite nicely what would work best for us in terms of this building. And so the Gulbenkian Foundation put in the money to put in a boiler in the basement to actually heat the place so that it could be used, which was kind of flexibility which is very difficult to think about in the way that funding bodies work now. Great, Paul. Thanks you.
Okay.
So on the left-hand side is a kind of quite early photograph, as you can tell, which luckily only just turned up the other week from Caroline Wallace, who's sitting on the left of the microphone. I'm at the back. Few other odds and ends. No picture of Tim there. Spon is on the very right-hand side of the photograph. Linda Farrell and Hugh Byrne, I believe, at the front. I don't know if anyone can recognise anybody else in that photograph, but it's an early photograph. At that time, Tim Powell and Linda Farrell were the people responsible for sorting out various bits of the building, creating a small performance space and a rehearsal room. And I see Caroline Wallace is mentioned in the chat room who the other people are, which is great. Good old Caroline. So I took on a subversive role and got a job with Luton Borough Council as part of this group. And it was subversive in the fact that I was going to find out about how to fund things, look at all those kind of terrible administrative things that people have to do if they're going to move an arts project forward. And I finished up at Marsh House and working on putting on events with play schemes and all of those kinds of things. And there is an importance to the arts of Luton in respect to Marsh House, because at that time we worked, Tim and Linda and Martin also worked at creating inflatables that were used in the play scheme that I was involved with at Marsh House. And for those who know about inflatables nowadays, is that they are the most kind of safe play objects, and they have walls and kids can't fall off them. But in the days that we made inflatables, and Martin and Tim were pretty expert at making inflatables, they were just basically big cushions, and the idea was you just threw kids onto the cushions, and if they fell off and broke an arm, that's what happened. So things like health and safety didn't come into any kind of effect. And one of the reasons I'm kind of talking about all of this is the fact that there was a relationship between the artwork that was trying to be undertaken at 33 and the play scheme and the creativity that was happening at Marsh House, and the two things did actually work together. And I mean, there were some amazing events that took place at Marsh House, for instance, and I think it was 1979. There was a gig which featured UKDK and Crass that happened in the Nissan hat at Marsh House. I hid under a desk in Marsh House while it was all going on. And there was part organised by a guy called Fahim Qureshi, who became involved with 33 a little bit later as well. So there's kind of all of these things that went on. And bit by bit, the work at 33 developed. I went on to do a course at the London City University in terms of arts admin, which was funded by the Borough Council. So all of these kind of things were done to actually increase and make 33 important. And so we moved, as I said, we moved in around about 76, 77. There was work we did for the Luton Carnival, which I believe was the first of the carnival. So we're part of Luton Centenary Year, and we were involved in as community arts team in that. And bit by bit, we started to put on performances and band performances at 33, created a rehearsal room there for local bands, and we started to do some programming of the space. And then in 1980 or 81, we actually took over the next building as well, 35. So that increased the whole scope of the building and the programming. And within 35, we created darkroom, video editing suites, the recording studio that we had that Steve Spong came back to run later in the 80s, and we started to professionally program the events. So Paul, if I could have the next slide.
Yeah.
So these are kind of a few examples of the next few slides are examples of the programming that we used to do in the Arts Centre. So we had a whole wealth of workshops, performances, the dark room. We started people like Caroline Wallace came to work with us. We did courses. We set up the town's first vegetarian cafe in the building. The program was intensive. We had amazing events. We became part of a touring circle from Jazz Services, which was at that time the National Organisation for Jazz. We put on local gigs. Particular people came to work with us. In the 80s, we set up, I think 1984, we did some work when Channel 4 was first set up, and there was a film and video group set up at the building with Dermot Byrne, Gavin Hodge, Jean McClements, and they started to work on producing, and I did some work for Channel 4 at the time, where we looked at creating product for Channel 4, which was quite interesting. And if we have the next slide, perhaps we could stop there for some questions, Paul, if anyone wants to ask.
Go on, mute yourself, folks, if you'd like any points you'd like to make to Paul, or any questions.
And he's rambling a bit.
Hi, Paul. I was just going to ask about the studio. Was the studio starting at that time as well?
The studio came slightly later in the 80s, and that was in that back part of the building, as you will remember, the kind of bit that was always falling down. But Spon had been involved with us anyway in terms of gigs at 33, and then later on Spon took over the recording studios.
Okay, thank you.
So again, you can see here on these two programs different, the photography, which actually Caroline organised the exhibition space. The other thing that 35 gave us was room to have a dedicated photography exhibition space, which was really, and we had a dark room as well. So there was a philosophy about 33, which was actually providing resource, and this is where the kind of slight changes to how things work now is that we actually use the money that we raise to actually provide resources that people could use. So there was no kind of hierarchy in the sense that all of the kind of work that went on in 33 was democratic in the sense that people would come in to do drama workshops and finish off being a filmmaker, for instance, because there were social spaces. People kind of got to know each other. We had the cafe. Just as a little aside, which is always something really I always remember quite well, was the fact that we had the vegetarian cafe, and bit by bit during that period, during the 80s, it became a kind of a hangout for the local goths from the town, which was really interesting. And my son was working in the cafe, and one of the issues was that the goths would come in and make one cup of coffee last for 3 days, and which was quite res. And my son one night went into the centre and hung strings of garlic all over the place to try it.
Did that get rid of them?
Yeah, to try and move them on for the following day.
Yes.
which was great. And this kind of interaction between people coming in to do creative work and the kind of work that was done for the film and video and the drama groups and things like that is quite interesting, because Danny Cannon, who went on to become filmmaker, well known, actually came in and started working. It came in first, I believe, to do drama courses, and with Jacqueline Andrews and Spike Knowles at that time. And he then got involved with the video workshops that Dermot Byrne was working on at 33. And Danny, as some of you will know, went on to make a film called The Young Americans with a guy called Dave Arnold, who was actually also a user of 33. David Arnold is now kind of one of the world's leading film composers. Did films for the Independence Day. He did 5 James Bond movies, I believe, for the music. Danny Cannon went on to direct Young Americans, was his first movie, I believe. And within that kind of social structure of 33, Danny met Dave, and Danny asked Dave to make the music for some of his early pieces of work. Danny got the commission to make a commercial film called The Young Americans. He asked David to write the score for that. From that, David went on then to do Independence Day. So all 2 local guys who used 33 worked together, worked through the courses that we were providing, went on to become, Danny, I think, is the executive producer for CSI, which I think have had about 15 seasons, lives nicely in Los Angeles, I believe. Dave, you know, probably wouldn't mind me saying that probably doesn't need to put pen to paper ever again, and he could live forever. So there's been a lot of science success stories out of the work at 33. Can we have the next slide, Paul? So part of the programming in those early days, we had some quite interesting characters. Jo Brand, who wasn't so particularly well known in fact, I think she did a performance before this in the late 80s, but this one goes from a performance she did at 33 in 1991, and I'm not sure what News Gazette, was that Luton News? Kind of but the date's there, May the 29th, 1991, and so that Jo Brand, who was performing at 33, and from what I can see on that, she was having a go about her weight, and also probably a go about men. And I always remember that Linda Farrell at the time, Linda spent some time, perhaps she'll tell us about that, but she spent some time with Jo Brand in the kind of little green space area we had before people went on stage, and I think Jo was really nervous about appearing in front of a small audience at 33, but I don't know if Linda's visiting with us tonight. She could probably bring us up to date. And then Mark Steele performed there, and again, this was in the early days. One of the interesting things about the archive that I'm trying to generate interest in and try and get funding to actually get the archive of 33 sorted, is that we have lots of program material, and a lot of it is dated, but whether it's age or kind of just insanity, I find it very difficult to put years to a lot of the program. So I know that Mark still performed at 33 on the 7th of November, but I have absolutely no idea what year that was. But before he was kind of a major star, and a lot of people came through the centre, musicians, drama people. We did a lot of theatre work with groups like Fort Bid Fantasy and Desperate Men and those kinds of groups. So one of the appeals that I'm going to be making through this talk, and also obviously kind of a bit of spiel I'll do at the end, is to encourage people who have better memories than me to get in touch, help with the archive. I know that the work of 33 touched a lot of people's lives, changed a lot of people's lives. You know, kind of, there's a whole history there that people took away from Luton, even if from 33, even if they didn't become professional in their lives in terms of the arts. But part of that kind of community and engagement that people had. I know so many people whose lives were changed just, you know, either coming to gigs at 33 or meeting people at 33. And it was kind of a, you know, I think it was the kind of lily in spite of the swamp in terms of Luton at a particular time. And I find that really interesting. Go to the next slides. I think the next slides are still program ones, Paul. But this is interesting. So on the left, we have a calendar that was put together with Hugh Byrne, who worked a lot with the at that time, and also later worked at 33, credible photographer. And we put a calendar together in 1994, which I didn't have time to scan all the photographs from it, but obviously there's 12 being a calendar. But that was for 1994 for the Herald and Post, which is, we kind of outlived the Herald and Post. But yeah, that was the calendar project that we did for them. And I can't remember, perhaps Caroline knows, whether we sold it to the Herald and Post or it was a freebie. On the right, and for people who know something about the Luton dance scene, is a kind of photograph of dear Perry Lewis from that period, from the 80s. And Linda Farrell, Perry came in to run a dance courses at the Art Centre, which were organised by Linda initially. And Linda managed to take Perry and a group of dancers to Amsterdam. And that was incredibly sorry, I just noticed that Ray said something about Perry, but yeah. She took this group of dancers to Amsterdam, and they did what Amsterdam was at that time, I guess. And Perry performed in Amsterdam. It was a very successful project, and it kind of led to Perry's formation of Jazzatech and his own amazing professional life as a dancer that took him all around the world. When they came back, there was, I think Linda set up some dance courses at Luton Sixth Form College, so there was a lot of outreach work that went on from 33. A choreographer came back from Amsterdam and did some work at the Sixth Form. So these are all kind of little things that were instigated at 33. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about this picture of Perry, but I saw Perry the other week, and it still looks like Perry, but it's an incredible picture I found by accident. Yeah.
I think that's Christiana top left, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, top left. You're right, Paul. That's correct. Yeah, and Tony, I believe.
Right.
There, and yeah, it's a great picture. I don't know if Muddy knows or Linda knows anything, those other characters, but I just love that picture of Perry. Really brilliant.
Has he seen that?
No, I'm going to dig it out. I may see him tomorrow night, I think, and I'm going to show that to him.
He'd love it.
Yeah, he'll love it, I guess. Any questions, actually, at the moment?
Hi, Paul. Spike.
Hello, man.
All right. How you doing?
Yeah, cool. I haven't seen you for a while. I can't see you now because I could just, yeah. But...
just to fill in a few things that you mentioned along the way, the video project ran about, I think it was 84 that you said, that they basically developed the first notion of scratch video, which is like a video version of scratching, or like, with vinyl. So they did the first, and it was broadcast on Channel 4. It was a kind of satire on Reagan and Thatcher at the time. So
Death Valley Days. Death Valley Days.
Death Valley Days, that's it. Yeah. And somewhere between me and Dermot, we may still have the tape somewhere. I don't know. We certainly got quite a bit of the archive stashed away somewhere. So if you need it.
Yeah, these are the things I need to know. I mean, I think I do have a copy of Death Valley Days, but I'm not sure what condition it's in.
Right.
Because I'm going to mention later on about, the issues and problems we've got with the archive.
Yep. And the other thing is going back to the early days in 78. I mean, I've already mentioned in the chat about the People Show appearing, because I remember Mark. I remember taking a friend there who's confronted by Mark. God, I can't remember his second name though.
Mark Long.
Mark Long, that's it. Naked with green poster paint all over him. And that person I took was quite shocked, because we were visiting from Luton Sixth Form.
Yeah, the other thing was Hinchcliffe.
Was it? Right.
I think the guy the guy that used to shock everyone at theatre work at 33 was
in here?
Hinchcliffe.
Yep.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Tim here.
Hello.
The Mark covered in green paint was part of the People Show.
Oh, okay.
I do remember that. And then they did 2 nights, And the other night, it was one of the female supporters. I don't know her name, unfortunately. She took that role and she covered herself in green paint. So the 2 nights were different.
Yeah, well, I'm coming on actually to talk about the people show in a little while. Because
all right, okay.
we've got some slides, but if I could take on the bit about...
Can I just do one other thing while I remember? About looking for archive material. The last time I spoke to Phil Imber, which was a couple of years ago now, he said he got his loft, he got all the archive of the Refleks material.
Yeah, unfortunately, Phil passed away, as you know.
Yeah, I know, but Sue, his wife, does she still have that material, or has she thrown it out?
Well, that's a question that has to be asked.
Yeah, I'm just saying you're looking for material.
Yeah.
Because Phil did all the designs, all the graphic designs, and he printed everything. So there would be lots of archive stuff for the Royal. Anyway,
yeah, the Royal stuff is the stuff I'm really missing out of a lot of things. So
yeah, well that's it, and all the early stuff in St Mary's Hall and the recreation centre and various other bits and pieces around town in community centres and stuff. That's all pre-33, and Phil would have had that information.
Yeah,
I've got nothing, I'm afraid. I've moved house so many times.
Well, one of the big, I was going to talk about this at the end, but one of the big reasons why the archive has to be sorted now is because the archive, it's not only material that's kind of disappearing, it's people that are disappearing. And
yeah, absolutely,
we're all of that kind of age. And I mean, you've survived, Tim, you're not getting any younger. But
thank you very much.
You're welcome. The whole thing is that a lot of the people who hold the history close to their heart are actually passing, and it's you know these things are quite difficult to talk about sometimes, but people do get in touch with me about this, you know, and it has to be done now, or we've lost, you know, in terms of recording people and finding out people's memories. Sorry?
My memory is not that brilliant, but I've got some memories from those times. So anytime you want to sit down and chat and put it together.
Yeah, no, that's great. And these are the things I want to hear. I'll quickly mention, sorry?
Hello.
Yeah, if you're coming up to the people banner later, I've got an interesting point to make.
Yeah, I've got the people show stuff coming up in a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I just want to say I'm Linda Farrell, also known as Muddy, that is mentioned. You just wondered if I was here, just to let you know I am.
Cool.
That picture of the dancers in Amsterdam that's there, one of the guys is called Tony. He's still about. He used to come to all the local dance classes as well, which were held by Leela, which was it's really good to hear from people. I remember meeting Jo. It was wonderful sitting in the text box. She was so nervous. There was someone on before her and she thought, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. She was chain smoking and she was just brilliant. I got on so well with her. I saw her again after that at different places and always had a good connection, and that was great. Lovely to hear from you, Spike. You also know me as Honeydew, of course.
Of course.
Roosevelt. But anyway, I just thought, as Paul mentioned, whether I was here, just to let you know, I am, and I'm listening and trying to get...
Thank you, Linda. We've also got Susan like to make a point.
I just wanted to ask whether you kind of made it up as you went along, or did you have existing models of other art centres who you're thinking, oh yeah, we need to do it like that, you know, like the Drill Hall in London, or places like that, places you'd been to that you kind of were using
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and that's cropped up recently with the work I'm doing through the university, because there were like parallel things that cropped up. If you look at the history of community arts in the United Kingdom, for instance, there are kinds of things that will happen in a simultaneous, you know, way in different towns. And we had a drama group that was created by the people who ran 33 and called the Fabulous Random Band, and we did work putting on our own shows, things like the Hills of Tennessee, and people like what were some of the other Birth of Radio, these kinds of shows. And we had a cabaret show, and we were involved with theatre groups that came to Luton. We went out elsewhere, and with our individual work, because Tim and I worked as musicians and went throughout Europe. In France, we worked in kind of, in this country would be called art centres, but they were in France they were called youth clubs like Maison de Jeunes, and we did kind of progressive music in these places, and we picked up experiences that we brought back to Luton. And so we did bring ideas back with us, and we gave ideas away, you know, and I'm really not within this talk, but Susan, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I'd really be keen to talk to you, because one of the outputs of whatever work we do through collecting the archive together may point to different ways that the arts could be looked at today in terms of the way the arts are funded, and the way, you know, should the arts be done in communities from the bottom up or from the top down, all of those kinds of really interesting questions. Yeah, so the short answer is yes and no, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm just interested because I do this project documenting alternative theatre and this website Unfinished Histories, and I know that, you know, there was a network at one point of arts centres, arts labs quite early on, late 60s, and then I'm not sure how late that went, and then there's a book I think in 1973 called Arts Centres, Every Town Should Have One. So they, you know, the Arts Council are, you know, at that point a lot more supportive. We had arts officers actively trying to encourage local initiatives like this and so on. So it's just interesting to kind of know where you sat within all of that.
Yeah, well, I became a panel member for Eastern Arts, looking at community arts projects, and that was at the time when the Arts Council actually had people who were practitioners who actually, they weren't all administrators. You know, there was practitioners, and I did a lot of work we did work in Drury Lane Arts Centre, Arts Lab, with the People Show, and also we worked, my work with the People Band. We used to do a lot of work at Robert Street Art Lab in London, and so that Arts Lab thing with people like Hoppy, who created the first video work in the country, and that, you know, really creative, interesting times. And I don't want to get off the subject too much, but sometimes I think, you know, the way that things are funded now, I had a conversation with someone else the other day, is that back in those days, you could have an idea about a project and you could go to the Arts Council to see if they would fund the project. Now what seems to happen is that the Arts Council have programs of activity which they fund, and then creatives change their work to fit the policies from the funders, and it's kind of turned it around a bit on its head, which I find a kind of interesting subject. But in those days, it seemed like you could do anything. And if I quickly go back to the work of film and video group that Spike mentioned, and Dermot Byrne, such a creative person, and Gavin Hodge, Gary Whiteley, and people like that. And he mentioned the Death Valley Days, and that work led to the creation of a group called Guerrilla Tapes, and Guerrilla Tapes with John Dovey, I believe. Their work was featured in Tape Britain's look at the century of film, and their work is still used in colleges to look at scratch video and the way to to do all of that stuff. So it's a lot of that stuff was generated out of 33. It's really interesting. Go to the next slide, Paul. And talk of the devils. On the right is Dermot in one of his video workshops, and in his hand he has a part of the editing suite that we had. Great picture of Dermot. He put on weight after that, I think. And then on the left hand side we have the infamous Spawn in the kind of recording studio at 33, which was all wires, and yeah, God, it's good, so good to see. And the recording studio at 33 was, well, it was actually 35, but it was in a building that kept falling down bit by bit. And because anyone who knows the geography of Luton will know that the mighty Lee passes through Luton, and it passed at the bottom of this particular building, and I think that little trickle wore away the foundations of the building bit by bit. But yeah, there you go. And so part of the program at 33, we had, there was lots of other people involved. So we had regular performances by bands, local rock bands like Kama Sutra, The Static, DK obviously. Gaynor, if anyone can remember Gaynor's second name, had a punk band that we used to perform.
Gaynor Griffiths.
Gaynor Griffiths.
Yeah, well done. Thanks for I know that voice. We talk about Fahim. We actually gave Fahim those people who don't know it, Fahim is kind of well-known arts producer and everything else in Luton and everywhere else. We gave him his first paid job, and so a lot of people hold us responsible for his career. So yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later. Sorry?
Can I drop in here
Yeah.
about Fahim? Fahim contacted Refleks in the days when Refleks were just getting involved with Luton Arts Council.
That's when they had short trousers, yeah.
Just about. I mean, I think it was 15 at the time. There was him and a friend of his called Ricky. I forget his surname. And they had the two of them using 8mm film, had a group called Matrix, and they got a grant via Refleks from the Luton Arts Council to do a documentary about Marsh Farm.
Yes.
So that was Fahim's first contact with the grant aid business.
that was Ricky Newville.
Newville, yeah.
Newville.
Yeah.
And we got a grant of £50 to make that movie. Focus on Marsh Farm.
That's it. Hi, Fahim.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to Refleks. I think that's 1977.
Yeah, well, I reckon it was slightly prior to that, but 76.
Yeah, 76, yeah.
Before that, it was before the centenary was 1976.
Are you sure? I thought it was 77.
I'm sure because
It was 77.
Yeah, thank you, Muddy.
No, hang on, can I explain why? Because we did a big show in Luton Tech College, which was funded by the Luton Centenary Organisation, and it was called 2076.
Yeah,
which was 100.
I thought it was 2077, so there we are.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Anyway, these are the reasons why we're trying to do this project, because it's like,
trying to get everyone's minds back together.
So
Okay.
can I just run quickly through some of the stuff that we did there before we run out of time? So
Sure.
So we had all those local music gigs going on. There's Spawn again, actually, come up on screen on the left hand side. We had a jazz club which had UK touring musicians, and we had international performances there. And one of the memorable gigs at 33 was a performance by Mal Waldron, who was Billie Holiday's a pianist, which was, I think I've mentioned to several people, it was the first time I've seen grown men cry when Mel played. That was amazing. Mel played. There was the Wild Ogre Folk Club, which was run by Anne Mullins. We had the Comedy Club. Theatre, we had, you know, as I said, Forkbeard and Desperate Men and different things. The dance groups and all that business. Every first Sunday of the month, we had this amazing art exhibition. It was put together by Caroline and Gerald Kent Wood, who sadly passed away. And I don't know where all Gerald's drawings and archive is, but Gerald, for those who don't know, Gerald was an artist who drew everything in Luton. He drew little kind of bits of the old railway bridge. He drew little tiny bits of architecture, and that work was incredible. And I don't know what happened to that. Perhaps Caroline knows what happened to all of that work after he died. One thing I should mention is that all of 33 in 78, a charity was formed, Luton Community Arts Trust, which looks after the administration of the Arts Centre, and people like George Collin, Ray Batson were kind of founder members of that trust, and they're still going and still look after the kind of the legal side of the work we did that kind of went on past the life of 33, although we're only talking about 33 now, but that, you know, there was another life about that. One of the other people that came out of 33 of note is this guy Dominic Allen. Dominic had a studio at 33, well, within 35. He went on to go to, was it Chelsea, I believe, and then he changed his name by deed poll, can you believe, to Dominic from Luton, and now he has work in the statue galleries, and it's kind of one of the well, he's not particularly young anymore, but at that time he was one of the part of that kind of explosion of British artists. Go to the next slide, Paul, sorry. Can you go back one? So in 89, we also launched 33 Records, which was kind of came together because of the fact that so many touring bands were coming through Luton without any recording contracts and stuff like that. But the first work we did was with local artists, and first couple of releases was by a local reggae singer, Sister Rose, whose photograph I couldn't find for the love of God at the moment. I will do. And also an album with Cutty Williams, who's on the left-hand side. Cutty is a phenomenal singer, still going, sings in the commercial world. Incredibly creative person, and Cutty's a very beautiful person. And one of the first jazz albums we did were these two guitarists, and the guy between these is the man Zeke, who used to be a local radio presenter and an artist in his own right, and quite a kind of charismatic figure. These two wonderful guitarists are the only time I've ever been in a recording studio where I had a complaint from the other side of the street because these two guys were arguing about how to play a particular chord, and they kind of finished up having an amazing. So it was a guy called Ignacio, and his second name will come to me at some point. So, and that was kind of 89, 90. Next slide, Paul, because I'm aware of the time. So, and also in 1990, we started a relationship with Tina May, and over the years we've released about 14 albums with her. And this is all part of 33 Jazz, which is a label which again was born out of 33. And we've released 300 odd albums over the 40 years, whatever it is, however long it is.
Paul?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here. I only spoke to Spon a couple of days ago for the first time in 20 years. I don't know if you remember me, Simon Donahue. I was his second in command.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wanted to say that I was there and recorded Cutty and Spanglo is what they were called.
Spanglo, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
The old memory's gone. Yeah.
Just wanted to drop that in there. It's a delight to see all you guys again. And pretty wacky, really. It's a long time.
It is a long time. Yeah.
A long time, but yeah, I remember a lot of the bands we recorded. So I might be able to input a bit now and then.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, I'm going to make this big kind of appeal at the end of this mad non-chronological run through history to get, you know, people to send me stuff, talk to me, and I can start collating the kind of where material is and stuff. And that's part of, I'm going to set up a kind of completely separate Facebook group to act as a kind of a receiving thing. So yeah, it's Tina, and we didn't. Not everything was recorded in Luton or studios. This Tina May album was recorded in Paris, and the label itself went on to worldwide distribution, which is interesting. Go next slide, Paul. How are we doing for time? Are we okay?
Yeah, what we'll do is that if we finish in about 10 to 15 minutes, then we'll leave the rest of the time open for chat between you guys.
That'd be brilliant. So quickly on the left-hand side here, we have, just to prove the point that we didn't, not all the product was recorded in the little studio at 33. This is Hans Koller, an artist that we recorded, and that's been recorded in the Abbey Road studio, which is quite lovely, which is a beautiful grand piano. So the picture, rushing through things, this picture on the right is Hugh, and then Sue Smith and Muddy, or Linda Farrell. And if I kind of get my dates right again, we got some money, or Linda got some money from
Luton Community Partnership.
No, prior to that, I think we had manpower money, didn't we?
No, that was way back in Fahim's time when we got that.
Oh, Fahim, yeah, because we had a community arts team.
That's right.
That did a load of work in Marsh Farm.
Yeah, that was 1980. Yeah, Manpower Services Commission, 1983. That was my first ever real job.
Yeah, well, there's a kind of debate about that. Was it 83 or 85?
83.
Was it?
When I finished art school in Leeds. It was my
83,
first.
Paul. It's Andy here.
Hi, Andy.
Hi,
fantastic.
Hi, Muddy. It was 83, Paul. I've got a video here, actually, of the Arts in the Park project that we did, so I can pass that on.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, what we need to do is kind of keep the source material and try and make copies of everything. Because you know what might happen if it comes to me, the last original copies. But yeah, so okay, so if we move on to this, and it's important to get it in, is that one of the great achievements out of 33, that kind of later period, was the creation of a group called SNAP, which was Social Needs
Awareness Project.
Thank you very much, Maddie. It was coming to me. Social Needs Awareness Project. And that was funded through the Luton and Dunstable Partnership. Can we cut to the chase on that one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And
that picture is the beginnings of it, with Hugh, Sue, and myself there.
And the incredible thing about that project, and which kind of became a kind of outreach project as well, was it was a project using the arts, using photography mainly to work with young kids with certain problems, drug problems, drink problems, homeless problems, and it became an incredibly successful project. And that team with Sue and Huey, and later on people, I think Fiona, was it later as well? That was perhaps after 33, but yeah, it just was an amazing project. And Paul, if we consider next slides, I think, yeah, so can you go back one? I think, oh, here we go. So On the left-hand side is a piece of artwork by Hugh Byrne. He was kind of involved in the really early days of this kind of work, and it was prior to Photoshop. A lot of the work he used to do, he used to work with film and cut up the film. I think this is a Photoshop one that he did later, but those techniques were taken through working with kids, and this next picture is about people with drink issues and stuff like that, and this whole way of using the image that kids created gave them a way of looking back at themselves in a creative way, and helped a lot with kinds of loads of, without getting into big details of society and God knows what else, is these images helped that were created by the kids in conjunction with Huey, kind of just made people able to look back at themselves. And it was a really interesting project and a really amazing work. And one of the great things that came out of 33 is it actually changed people's lives. Flash through the next couple of pictures, Paul. A couple of bits more work that came out, and some more work that came from out of that whole SNAP project. Again, you can see this kind of use of Photoshop and the work with the kids that created such beautiful work. So we come back now to one of the great projects out of 33 was the fact that we brought the collaborative work we'd done previously with the People's Show to Luton. And the People's Show, for those who don't know, was, I think, a major force in contemporary performance art in the UK. They're still going as a group after 50, 60 years. Mark Long on the left, and one of the projects we did at one of the projects they did at Luton, they used the space at Luton to rehearse their big London shows and to work through them, and they also put on their own kind of specific shows for 33 or for Luton. An example of how incredible they were, they did a run through of a show called their Dentistry Show, which actually went to the ICA in London, but they used the top floor of 33, and for those who don't know that, it had a concrete floor, and when they said they were going to put a dentist chair up there, we all said, yeah, that's fine, yeah, don't worry. Then we heard the drilling going on, and basically they were so authentic about the work they did. The dentist chair that they set up in the top floor of 33 actually worked, but with all the wires hidden, because they just drilled through the floor and laid all the water pipelines into the dentist, where you spit and all that stuff. Incredible detail. Picture on the left is from, on the right, sorry, it's from the Mad Hatter show that they did in Luton. And that was about the infamous Luton murder, the Mad Hatter murders. And we had bodies floating down the stream outside the centre. They used every room in the building. Can I have the next slide, Paul? And this is Jose. This was part of the People's Show's performance at 33. And the image on the right, and there's a picture of Spike actually in the middle, who spoke earlier. Was an incredible show because the performance space, it's me at the back, I think, playing. The beautiful part of this show was the fact that everyone was fed at the end of the show, and and just before this picture there was a curtain that was drawn down the middle before the food was served. So the people on the left hand side were given water and bread, and were given a speech from Das Kapital by Karl Marx, and the people on the other side had takeaway curries, and it was, and then I think they had someone playing soft, beautiful music to them, and it was completely arbitrary. It was just pure luck whether you got the side with Karl Marx and water, or you got the the side with folk songs and curry. But yeah, amazing people. Next slide. I don't know if there's anything else.
That's the last one, Paul.
Right, so quickly coming to here. One of the problems of the archive is that we have lots of stuff on tape, which is deteriorating. We can probably find machinery in that to get some of the stuff off that and look at it. The issues with a lot of the work that we have is on what's called pneumatic tape. It's unbelievable trying to find machines to play pneumatic tapes at the moment. So that's one of the things that we'll be putting out. We're not sure of the state of the archive. We're not sure what's left on these tapes. We have hundreds of them that have got to be ploughed through. We lost a major amount of parts of our archive in a major flood at 33 before we left. Some of the stuff was salvaged. And then along with Caroline Wallace, when we moved to the Hat Factory in 2000, 2001, we had a lot of the archives stored on the roof of the Hat Factory. But unfortunately, at that time, they employed a caretaker who decided to throw everything away without asking anyone about the value of it. So we lost a lot of stuff off the roof, and I think Caroline lost a lot of things as well. So someone's just writing they have 2 pneumatic machines.
Wow!
Is that from Spike? Have you got those? Incredible.
Yep. I know.
Brilliant, man.
One might work.
One might work. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're incredibly difficult to get going, and you risk the tapes breaking up as you put them in.
Yeah.
So you have to nurse them along. I mean, Dermot is in no state to ask at the moment, but
no.
I know he has one that's one at the moment. So
yeah. Talking to Dermot, do you know how well he is at the moment? I know.
Not very.
Okay, because I tried to ask. Sorry for everyone else hearing this, but I tried to ask. And Tess has been in touch with me. Did you know Tess was
yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. Arrange to
All
meet.
right. Yep.
Cool. So I rushed all that through.
I've got a question before we finish the kind of the formal for the presentation. Allow you guys, the great community, to chat and take things forward. My question is actually about the building itself. Do you know what the two parts of the question? Do you know what its original use was?
Yeah, it was a hat factory.
Do you know who it was owned by? Did you have the original documentation of the lease agreement from it, or?
No, not for 33, because it was a building owned by the Borough Council.
Right.
35 was different. 35 was owned by the Facers, the coal merchants.
Oh, right, yes, yeah. Who owned the place on the corner?
Yeah.
With the stables round the back, yeah.
Absolutely. And they were the people that owned 35. I mean, if I can, as everyone knows, it is now a building site. It's been a building site since 2001.
Well, can I ask that then? Why 33 had to come to an end in that format, and what the reason was for demolishing the building? Right.
Well, here we go. So someone mentioned to me the other day, don't get involved in politics, but I have to. So basically, 33 was coming to the end of its life. Bits of it were falling down at the back. There was a lot of kind of subsidence. The building, for safety reasons, the building needed some money spending on it. At that same parallel to that the building, which is now the Hat Factory, came on the market in the sense of being a possible move for us as a working group of artists with a huge track record, run by a charity which in 30, 40 years, well, up until today, which is up 50 years, never run a deficit. So a kind of really solid organisation, track record of using large sums of money from the Arts Council. There's things I've not mentioned that were funded, like the Joey project, which was 100 grand, all that sort of stuff. we were the clients for Eastern Arts to go into the Hat Factory as an organisation. Luton Borough Council had different ideas. They thought it should become a building to sell tickets for the bus station, which then existed on the car park. Then going forward a couple of years, the lottery came on board, and so the art became kind of a viable proposition for the Borough Council to look at the Hat Factory as an art centre. And even though and that became Artesian, then the disaster which happened that, and the High Court fighting over the council and the Artesian Trust fighting over who owned the lift shaft, who owned the lift, which I kind of went to the High Court to see a bit of that. Lawyers on £1,000 a day arguing who owned what. So the whole thing was a complete and utter disgrace. And we had plans for the Hat Factory, architecturally plans done by the guy who'd done the Everyman in Manchester, I think, and really beautiful plans with proscenium arch, theatre, God knows. But yeah, I mean, that's the story for another day. And the reality was that we moved into the Hat Factory as a palmed out, project, because we had to lose a lot of the work we did, because we just basically went in with office space. We took the studio part. We managed to negotiate a studio at the Hat Factory, which someone put nearly £500,000 worth of investment into. That is no longer there. It's a story that could be told outside of this meeting, but
yeah,
it's
sure.
an interesting story.
Understand.
Oh,
yeah.
Can I just say something to Paul Hammond about a question he asked about 33?
Yes.
What it was for. It was at one time a hat factory, but I do believe that during the war it was used as a barracks, which is quite an interesting thing in terms of the Luton heritage, which you're interested in. And I believe it's a barracks, and there's a lot of history with there, because our caretaker we had for years, known as Ray, had so many keys and everything, and he used to tell so many stories of things that he heard. And I just want to mention Ray.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He was such a part of 33.
Thank you very much.
And he also actually had ideas about ghosts, didn't he, that he'd heard?
That's what I meant. He heard them. The ghosts from the barracks.
Yeah, interesting stories he had. He passed away. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember, but the room at the very back of the building that was next to the recording studio was supposed to be haunted, and it wasn't used for years. And then I think it was Hugh that had the guts to go up into it and clear it all out, and he turned it into a green room, well, blue room, for doing photography with background.
Yeah.
And I do actually remember going into the building below once and seeing all of the fluorescent bulbs were all flickering. It really freaked me out because they shouldn't have been.
There is so much more to say on all of this, especially with ghost stories and everything. Paul, both of you. It's just this has got a long way to go, and I hope that we can make it go further. It was
so thank you very much. That's a really great point. Brings me to Paul as we in the last 5 minutes of our meeting. How would you like to take this forward, Paul? How would you, we've still got over an hour and a half since in. We've still got 52 people are on the Zoom. What would you like to do? Because I sense there's a lot of archive material, and more important, willing hands, and and a great community still out there. What are your plans? What are your requests for people here to keep this community going and to be part of the project?
Absolutely, because the project's too big for just one person to sort out, and that a lot of the history of 33 is about actual people's experiences and memories, and there are plans that I want to record people's ideas and their own memories, and actually build up a picture. So the idea for the end of the archive is, and archives shouldn't just be things that are locked away in a room, you know, and going through the process and thinking, well, that's it. What I'd like the archive to do is actually bring other questions alive. So, you know, the archive won't be static. We're going to create websites that's kind of interactive, so people that are interested in the whole process of community arts development can add to it, look at the archive. I'd like to work on a book which looks at a non-chronological, where you can tell that I'm not a great one for chronology, you know, something that dips in and out in a creative way to look at the way that the arts kind of impact on people's lives. And it impacts on people's lives in very different ways. You know, people who were involved in 33, they may have come to a couple of gigs, they may have kind of got involved with Glenn from Marshouse's Exodus project through, you know, just coming into the centre, seeing a message about something. The way that people met within the town centre in a creative way, I find a really stimulating exercise in the sense of how things could be now and how they should be now, where you have people that are interested creatively. They have open access to spaces that they can use. They can interact with people without pressure of too much money and too expensive rooms and all that kind of stuff. So what I'd like people to kind of, you know, I'm contactable either through Facebook or through paul@33jazz.com. Perhaps I find a way of spreading that email to people. And I'll start collating and collecting material that people have, and also their memories, and the kind of, I want to include it, all the people that I've not been able to mention in this, you know, who kind of were part of 33. There's loads of people that we could run through, you know, people like Sue to get back in touch and see what memories she has, and people who work with 33 later in the day. Yeah, so that's what I want. And at the end, I want to kind of generate some income through the Heritage Lottery Fund to actually enable me to do this and to take people on a journey with me, which I think would be really exciting.
Colleagues, I'll just repeat some of the messages that we said at the start, then the final few minutes. Again, just for those people that have joined us through the in the last hour and a half, these talks are part of a series, monthly, alternating online and in person at Bushmead Community Centre. Yes, Ed, what would you like to say?
Thank you very much, Paul. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Paul, for this fascinating and extremely nostalgic event, which has been brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed it. I just wanted to share a completely irrelevant memory of 33, which some of you might identify with. As a young man in the early 90s, my brother was in various bands, and then I went on to be in various bands later on. But one memory I have of 33 is practicing in the room upstairs. I can't remember if it was the second or third floor, but I always assumed that the floor was made of jelly or sponge because one of the things that, if it wasn't exciting enough being sort of 13 or 14-year-olds in a rock band in the early 90s, it was the sort of feeling of impending peril that you could disappear through the floor at any moment.
It's 21 hours.
Sure. It was all tyres.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, it was tyres. I mean, you'd never get away with it now. It's kind of going back to those talks about health and safety things. But the cheapest way to actually soundproof the soundproof room was to use tyres. So yeah, a lot of people don't.
Good heavens. Well, I mean, I just assumed it was sort of slightly rotten wood.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it was rotten wood, but it was rotten wood on top of tyres.
Yeah, but, yeah. I just, you know, I had many very happy memories at 33. You know, playing. I think my first gig was with a band called The Smile back in probably about 95, and went to many gigs there and had some brilliant times, saw some fantastic exhibitions and met some brilliant people. And you know, just wanted to say thanks for tonight and thanks for all your hard work.
No, thanks for
a really wonderful place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something about the soundproof room?
Please do.
The construction was to avoid what they call transduction, which is noise being sent through girders and floors and walls and everything else. A separate room was actually built using a wood frame with plasterboard inside and out, filled with polystyrene, which you never get away with today. The ceiling was also plasterboard filled with roofing felt. And the whole thing was completely separate from the original room, and it just balanced on a layer of car tires, which is how we kept the noise to a reasonable degree.
Can I just add something random in there? I don't know, all the people that used that room, can you remember the smell?
Well,
it was in the days that you could still smoke indoors, and boy, that place used to smell.
It had two extractor fans, one taking air in and one taking air out. But obviously it wasn't enough.
We've got a couple of minutes, folks. Just to say that if you haven't put your postcode in the chat, if you can do so, please. That's important for our monitoring purposes. And just to again, just a couple of adverts about our Hightown guided walk. Okay, on Saturday, the 26th of February. An email will be coming to you following this Zoom, just to give you the link for that, as well an opportunity to comment and to on the planning proposal to demolish the Moulders pub and the Edge. I wonder whether you know anything about the Edge, Paul, as a venue.
Yes, yeah.
But there are plans for that to be demolished as well, and kind of a semi-skyscraper put up there. So if we don't comment, then it won't even be discussed at committee. So I'll put the URL in there, and we can then do that.
Yeah. Now's
a chance to bring in Ray, okay? Because I think you would like to speak to us, Ray, about this thing here. Over to you.
I would love to. I won't go through all the slides because we're running out of time, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the project that Paul is on, because we're open for applications and some of you might want to get involved with your own projects. Can I just skip 2 slides, Paul?
Yep.
Because I was going to introduce the team, but you'll see us around anyway. I can also circulate these later. We just wanted to say we're part of the University of Bedfordshire. We're in the Faculty of Creative Arts, Technology and Sciences. So we're faculty based, and we are currently running 3 projects, 2 of which I want to talk to you very briefly. Heritage Impact Accelerator is a 10-month program of support to develop your project. Paul's been with us. Perry Lewis is also with us, looking at their archive, examining what they can do to put in a really successful bid for like a bigger piece of work. So it's a really nice incubator. You get 4K of support. You get time as well, and time to bounce off each other. And it's been just such a privilege to do this work with Paul. We're looking for basically untold Luton stories. You might have an archive of work, or you might have a period of history that you want to look at. You want to get some funding to do it. You're not quite sure where to start.
Here's your place.
Can I get the next slide, Paul?
Yep, sure.
Fantastic. I'm diving through because you've been here and you've been fantastic all night. And it's open until the Monday, the 31st of January. It's a really simple online form. We have drop-in workshops at 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Zoom, which you can find on our Facebook page. Or you can just email us for a one-to-one support. We really are there to like help you with any sort of application you might want to make. You know, we're not trying to test people. We want it to be a discussion. And you can see wonderful Carly there, who is also part of the Heritage Forum, and is also a participant and has been just fantastic on this first cohort. I can have the next slide, please, Paul.
Sure.
I'm really whizzing through because, you know, it's just a bit of information for you guys. I'll put some stuff in the chat as well. So that's a 10-month program of support, funded by the National Heritage Fund, but we also have an open-ended needs-led support called the Heritage Enterprise Hub, where we run events looking at particular skills, particular people's stories, how to apply for bids. We support people with their individual bids. It might be that you don't want to do a 10-month development program, that you know where you're at, you just want to get a bid in and you just want some help doing that. We can help you through this Heritage Enterprise Hub. It's completely free, it's completely needs-led. So if there's anything that you want to explore, again, contact us at culture@beds.ac.uk and we can help you with that. And I just wanted to mention, if you can do the next slide, Paul, a very important thing, which says if you have enjoyed tonight, oh, I'm missing a slide, fantastic. I'm just going to put the stuff in the chat. If you have enjoyed tonight, tomorrow at 6 p.m, Paul and Perry are going to be doing an event looking at archive, and when you've got an unusual archive, how do you approach that? So it's talking about some of the stuff that Paul's touched on here, but looking more specifically at like what are the challenges when you've got like a community-led archive, or like in Perry's case, Perry Lewis's case, you're trying to archive a dance form that was very of the moment, and people might not have been thinking about how you're going to think about it 20 years down the line. That's going to be co-hosted by me and also by Amanda Egbe, who is a senior lecturer in media studies at the University of Bedfordshire. She is an absolute, like one of those minds that just absolutely blows your mind. Her archive work is just incredible. She looks at projects around the sort of early 90s and documenting the early 90s. So that should be a really nice discussion. It's an hour, again, it's free. I've just posted in the chat 2 ways in which you can sign up for that, and also a little bit more information at the top if you are interested in applying for Heritage Impact Accelerator. And if in doubt, just email us at culture@beds.ac.uk, and we're always up for a chat about what heritage projects you might want to look at, or if there's anything that you think people need help with that isn't being addressed. That's it really. And I just want to say thank you so much for this event. It's been so fascinating. I've heard so many stories over the last sort of few months, Paul, but it's every time I listen to you speak, there's like a new fascinating like tidbit that I'd completely missed. And it's an incredible piece of work. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Last word for you, Paul.
Yeah, I pay compliment to Ray, because I must say that when I embarked on this, I was in two minds whether it was like just because through my life I've had these kind of battles with funders and God knows what else. But the one great thing about this project is it's kind of, it seems a weird thing to say, but it's actually created me headspace to be able to work through certain things. Because there are things which I will talk about tomorrow which are about archive and how radical archive can be. And that's looking at things like memory, ego, how you kind of document stuff in particular times of your life. And all of these things have kind of come through to me through just having the space to think about it. You know, like when I first thought about this, I thought I'll just get all the tapes copied and that'll do, but there are kind of deeper things which about collective memories and God knows what else. But yeah, I find it fascinating.
Great.
So I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight, those that are left.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. And really appreciate that. Look, that's all of us that are there. So why don't you just video on and just give a wave to everyone? Video on. Come on, let's see your dressing gowns.
Let's video like we did last summer. Yeah.
I'm gonna smile. I'm going to be doing a photo. If you want to, don't mind me doing a photo of this in 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Give us a wave. Come on, 33. Let's see you. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. See you next month. And great. Have a great evening.
Yeah,
bye
thank
for
you,
now.
Paul.
Bye, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul. Bye.
Hi, Sue.
See you, Paul.
See you. Thanks. We'll have a, yeah. We'll have a pint soon. Whatever.
Nice to see you, Sue.
Good. One by one they left, like a sinking ship. Sue.
You got both stuck. Yes, you have. You got both stuck.
It's like one of those things.
Okay, here we go, everyone. Take care.
Yeah,
Good
bye,
evening.
Paul. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Paul.